Hi, I'm Will Bruin, and I was just recognized as a Seattle Sounders legend. Now I get to do voice reads for the Sounder at Heart podcast network.
Here we go. Come on! Hey, O'Shan! Let's go!
The Seattle Sounders have done it! MLS Cup winners!
Here comes Rui Diaz through the middle to crown it for Seattle!
The Sounders rule the region!
Seattle Sounders is campeón!
All creatures great and small!
You know, what was the thought process in terms of who you decided to use and who you didn't?
Ever since Sounder at Heart wrote a commentary that we didn't take Gold Cup seriously.
This episode of Nos Arietes is sponsored by Full Pull Wines, a Seattle-based wine retailer and proud sponsor of Nos Arietes since 2011. Full Pull was founded in 2009, is based in Seattle, and is owned and operated by longtime Sounders supporters. They offer the best boutique wines of the world to members of their mailing list, with special focus on their home, the Pacific Northwest. Welcome to another episode of Nos Arietes, part of the Sounder at Heart podcast network, sponsored by Full Pull Wines, Hacks and Ferments, and our subscribers. We're recording on Tuesday, October 21st. I am your host, Jeremiah O'Shan. Today, I am joined by my co-host, Aaron Campo, and our engineer, Lickett. Well, the Sounders ended their regular season on a winning note. They get a 2-1 win over New York City FC that sends them into the playoffs on 55 points. That's good enough for 5th in the West, 10th in the Supporter Shield standings, which is actually the lowest they've ever finished in a playoff season, but still pretty decent. Aaron, what would you say your feelings are heading into the playoffs?
I am very cautiously optimistic. I think that the Sounders have a very good team. I think the way their defense has played down the stretch is really encouraging. Some of the underlying numbers about their road games are encouraging and have made me think that maybe they're not, quite as rough on the road as their record would indicate. But they've still got a very, very long road ahead to get to the MLS Cup, and
likely a road heavy road.
Yeah, absolutely, a road heavy road. And so, I think that whatever happens in the playoffs, as long as they don't get totally waxed, by Minnesota, I feel pretty good about this season. They won a trophy. They were a lot of fun to watch for long stretches of time. And I think that, if you can go into the playoffs feeling like you've got a shot to make a run and the games are engaging and worth watching, that's pretty good, especially, considering some of the injuries and things like that they've dealt with. So, I think I'm not going to say whatever happens in the playoffs is gravy, because I think that, if they get bounced in embarrassing fashion, that could definitely leave a bad taste in my mouth. But I feel pretty good that I'm going to be satisfied with the season when all's said and done.
I think the key for me in the playoffs is going to feel like we can compete.
Yeah.
And it's not so much what they do. And I mean, there's a scenario where they could lose to Minnesota United and, maybe they lose in 2 shootouts or something, and it won't really change how I feel they matched up. Right. But I do think this team is good enough to go on a run. They would, like you said, they'd have to play the conference semifinals and finals at the very least, or not the very least. They'd most likely have to play those on the road. There are scenarios, I will say this is one of the things that I've been saying a lot is, this last game wasn't completely meaningless from a standings perspective because it allowed them to finish ahead of 4 Eastern Conference teams. If they had lost this game, they would have actually finished below all 9 playoff teams from the East. But as a result of that win, they finish ahead of Nashville, Columbus, Orlando, and Chicago. And I'm not saying any of those teams are particularly likely to get to MLS Cup, but I don't know that that's impossible. I mean, the East to me looks really wide open, much more so than the West, where, the West feels like it's really the top 5 teams. I feel very strongly will be one of the top 5 teams will be the representative out of the West. I don't know that I feel the same about the East. I feel like there are 6 or 7 teams at least in the East who I could see making a run.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think Columbus is definitely a team that stands out to me as being pretty dangerous, pretty threatening. Philadelphia is definitely I'll believe it when I see it when it comes to the playoffs sort of category. Cincinnati to some extent as well. Obviously, Miami is the elephant in the room. If they play as well as they're capable of playing, they'll probably walk through the playoffs. But we thought that last year too, and they got knocked out in embarrassing fashion. So I wouldn't be shocked to see one of those teams end up making it through. Like you said, not the most likely scenario, but I would probably take one of those teams making it through, one of those 3 teams making it through, 3 or 4 teams, I guess, over any one team that wasn't Miami, right? Like, I'll take the field over Philadelphia or Cincinnati or Charlotte, probably.
Yeah, I would agree with that. For sure, I would agree with that. I think I would take the field over. I mean, I think I'd take the field over anyone on the East, frankly. Like you could take out any of the teams, but before I don't want to get too far beyond this last game and sort of the Sounders though. There was one big talking point coming out of this game, and that was the injury to Pedro de la Vega. He goes down with what we learned today is effectively a broken kneecap. That's the layman term. I think the medical term is fractured patella, I guess, but
sounds right.
And it sounds like the recovery on that is a lot more straightforward than if this was a ligament damage. So if he had torn his ACL, right, which was the biggest concern, I think, that's an injury that could take a year to recover from. If not, that could potentially knock him out for the entire next season. Whereas this injury, they're saying 6 months, but it sounds like there's a pretty good chance that he'll be able to train before then. And so if he takes 6 months from now, he would be back in April sometime. Not ideal, but you'd still be early enough in the season where you're going to have a pretty big role to play. And so it's definitely not a worst case scenario. It was sort of a freak injury though.
Yeah.
You watch it and there's not an obvious, point where you're like, oh, that's brutal, because he's going into a tackle, but not a particularly hard tackle. He's at first I thought it was on the temporary grass at Citi Field. It's not even on the temporary grass. It's actually on the permanent grass part of the field, just on the edge of the infield. And it doesn't look like his leg gets particularly stuck, but you can see his knee is all jacked up immediately. Right. But this is sort of a rare injury. And usually the injury happens from, a big fall or a real heavy, blunt force type of trauma. And that's not what happened here. I don't really have a good handle on exactly how the injury happened. I asked Brian actually if he had a good sense of that, and he didn't either, which I'm not surprised. That's not really his expertise. But such a weird injury, but really just a bummer more than anything else, because Pedro has been so much fun to watch this year. I do think he's a ceiling raising type of player for the Sounders. We've seen him have special moments. The Sounders seem to play better when he's on the field than when he's not. The numbers basically support that idea. That they have a much, much better record in games where he starts versus when he doesn't. Although if you look at when he's just on the field, the numbers are not quite so impressive. Still, I think I'm more bummed out for him than I am frustrated at this being another injury. I mean, this honestly, like the individual injuries sort of wash over me at this point with the Sounders.
Yeah, I mean, how could they not at this point in the year? And I would tend to agree. I think the thing that he gives you that maybe nobody else on the team does is he just has that unplayable factor when he's very much on. That, I mean, Rusnak is, God level in every game, but he can't like strike panic into opposing teams the way Pedro can when he's at his very best.
Right.
And the cost of that is that a lot of the time he's not at his best and he can be a little bit of a passenger sometimes, but they don't have anybody who offers that threat. as much as he does, at least.
Yeah, not as much as he does, but it's interesting because it comes at a time when Ryan Kent is getting ready to return to the field. I don't think Ryan Kent is as good of a player as Pedro de la Vega. He's certainly not shown as be as consistent as he is, but he is capable of those moments. In the same way, Georgie Manungu is also sort of capable of some of the stuff. And you combine those two players. I'm not saying, you can reconstruct Pedro de la Vega in the aggregate, but you can sort of get a little bit of the way there. And so that's part of why I'm not freaking out from a specific Sounders perspective. This is more of I feel bad for this player and I feel bad for me for not being able to get to watch him.
Right.
And I do think the Sounders' chances of winning it are diminished somewhat, but I'm still kind of optimistic about their overall chances.
This is not the same as losing Albert Osnack or Christian Roldan or
right.
It's just not in the same caliber. I think that there is a point in the not too distant future where Pedro could be that important to what the Sounders do.
Yeah.
But they've just kind of had to. I mean, he's played a lot this year. I think that there's this sort of incorrect belief about how often he's played this year, but he's played, I think, in close to 30 games. I mean, he's been a pretty regular fixture in the team. Well, he's been ultimately pretty healthy this year.
Right. And I was going to say that the thing that is even more of a misnomer than how many games, I think he's actually played in 37 games.
Yeah.
But what is even more of a misnomer, he's only not been available 6 games. So he had some injuries this year, but I think people in their mind have it much more extreme than it actually was. Like
for sure,
he was mostly available this year. He didn't play as much as anyone would have liked, but he played. I mean, he played a lot. He was available a lot. Yeah, he played in 37 games. He played 37 games this year. So, that's all but 10 games he played in so far. And
it wasn't until pretty deep into the season where he looked like a player that was undroppable when he was healthy.
Right.
Like it took a while to kind of figure out how to, best utilize him and where to deploy him and what kind of role to give him to where he became a player everybody agreed was kind of a key piece.
Yeah. He, up until the Club World Cup, through the Club World Cup, he really was it was unclear what was going on with him. And there was very open conversations, I think, among the fan base of whether or not he was a complete bust. And it wasn't even really immediately after the Club World Cup. His breakout game, if you remember, was the Earthquakes game where they suddenly started him on the left side, which was the first time they'd started him there. And he had that goal he had a great goal. He had a great assist. And then it was sort of like off to the races after that. And he was he was just a fun player. There was obviously he had 2 wonderful goals against Cruz Azul, but he had a whole bunch of just great goals throughout the season, at various times. Maybe my favorite one is the one he scored against the Galaxy in the Leagues Cup semifinal, where he just sort of showed to me so much of what he does well, which is chasing down a play. I think he was off of a rebound, and he's just like kind of I don't know. I just love the way he plays the game. He kicks the shit out of the ball. He's he's capable of these sort of mind bending moments, and you never question his effort. He's got a lot of talent. I think his upside is still really high, and one of the other points of conversation seems to be, well, I suppose maybe this means that he's sticking around for a while because it's going to be almost impossible to move him. And I don't think that's such a bad thing. Like if I like having him on the Sounders.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the thing with Pedro was that, okay, this is a player that we're buying because in the best case scenario, we can make a big profit off of him. The medium scenario is he turns out to be a player that's a key player for us for, a decent amount of time. I think if Pedro can come back strong next year, have a good couple of years, hopefully, re-sign, you're going to look at and be a key player for this team, be part of the next core of what's hopefully the next great Sounders team. you're going to look at that $7 million as a great investment. Maybe it's not
Right.
as great of an investment as it would have been if you could have sold him for $30 million. But,
Sure.
I think that that's still a pretty good outcome. $7 million for a guy that you could potentially have for 6 or 7 years is, I think everybody would take, that kind of business. So, yeah, it is. I do feel bad for the kid because he's clearly so talented. And this injury was such a freak injury. I just reject out of hand the idea that this injury occurred because Pedro is injury prone, whatever that means. It's just a freak injury. He's just had a lot of bad luck in a short period of time. And maybe he does end up being a player that just struggles with injuries his whole career, or maybe he ends up being a guy who struggles with injuries for a short period of time in his career, and it just doesn't end up being a thing that causes him that much, causes him that many problems in the long run.
Right. We really don't know. Where do you fall, though, on the other point of debate on this, which was, should he have even been playing? Before the game, Nico and I talked about how we thought he would play, that we thought he should play, really we wanted to see this whole front four playing, because if this is what you believe is your best attacking four, you need to get them minutes together. And they hadn't played together almost at all coming into this game. But there was some risk involved in it. Their Western Conference standing was not in question. They were going to finish fifth no matter what. You could talk yourself into it was not a meaningless game, but the stakes of this game were not so high that you felt like you had to play everyone. To that point, Obed Vargas and Christian Roldan didn't play. But I was totally fine with the decision to play him. I don't really question it, frankly, at all. But this
feels like a hindsight is 2020 situation. I think that it's a reasonable position to think, and it's not worth the risk, but I think that position is a lot reasonable if Jordan Morris has been healthy all season, if Pedro has been healthy all season, frankly, or available all season, or in form all season. This team still has some kinks to work out. I think that they have started sort of shifting into a more defensive playoff type mode over the past month or so, and that's borne out some good results in the defensive half of the field. But they haven't been as dynamic of an attacking team as they had been earlier in the season, and so I think that trying to get those guys minutes together is the right call, because there's risk in not doing that. There's risk in resting everybody and just kind of punting on that game, and then wasting that opportunity cost of getting them real game minutes together. And also, the point that you brought up earlier about potential home field implications for an MLS Cup final. I think that's maybe not the greatest concern in the world, but I think it's a valid reason not to punt on a game entirely.
Yeah.
And I think it would be one thing if Pedro was, still recovering from some kind of nagging injury and that there's a risk of him getting re-injured. But it's just, sometimes weird shit happens in a game, and this was one of those occasions, and you can't wrap these guys in bubble wrap every time out. You've got to.
That's sort of where I come down. Yeah. I mean, an injury like this feels like it's one of those things. Like, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. If it happened in this game, I suppose it's better than if it happened in the first playoff game, because at least you go into this knowing the situation. Who knows? Like, I don't know that there was something specific about the New York grass that made him have this freak injury.
I'm choosing to blame it because it's convenient, and because it's embarrassing that it's still a problem this long into things.
Yeah. Sure. Fair enough. But yeah, I don't know. Looking, though, ahead to Minnesota United, this series does not start until Monday. Gives us a little bit of time. As it were, I'm sure you knew this, but it would have conflicted with the Mariners' first game. So I don't know. I'm not going to say it's just as well, but it does clear up the sports calendar a little bit.
It does. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. Yeah, that would have been a tough choice, I'll admit.
Yeah, that would have been a tough one. But they go to Minnesota, a team they lost to twice this year, but who I oddly feel okay with going against. And, I'll preface this by saying I didn't love the matchup against any of the 4 top teams in the West.
Right.
But this is the one that seemed most, manageable.
Yeah, I don't think any team finishing ahead of you automatically means they're a better team that should be favored to win, but I do think it automatically means they're a team you have to take seriously, and Minnesota definitely is. And they're a team that the Sounders have struggled with this year for sure. That loss in Minnesota was one of the most frustrating games of the year. And yeah, it's a tough matchup, but the reality of it is that the stuff the Sounders do in the playoffs is the stuff Minnesota does all the time at a higher level. And so it's going to be an unwatchable series, I think, in a lot of regard. It's probably not going to be a fun one for neutrals, but I just trust the Sounders' ability to grind it out in games like these. I think what happens in the first leg, I guess you can't really call it a leg, the first game, is I think going to be critical to setting the tone. It'd be real nice if the Sounders were able to force Minnesota to come out and play when they came to Seattle. I think that would go a long way towards improving their odds. I don't think you have to win this game, but I think you have to at least get a point and establish yourselves as a credible threat to score, so that Minnesota can't just feel like they're going to be able to come home and grind out and go, take its penalties or grind out a win with a 0-0 in the third game. So I think it's going to be torturous. I'm not looking forward to it. But once the games get here, it'll be fun. But there's not a team I'd rather be playing that's ahead of us for sure. But at least some of those games would be interesting.
So I'll give you another. I don't know if I would feel any better about this if we were the 4 and they were the 5. I mean, I guess I would feel better in having a potentially extra home game, but I don't know, that 4-5 matchup feels like a tough one to really feel like there's an advantage to playing the extra home game. Like, you're still playing a good team. This is the Sounders' worst situation they were in last year, where they played Houston in the 4-5. They were the 4 seed. Houston was the 5 seed. I wouldn't be totally shocked if this series plays out similarly, where you have, a pretty tight, those games obviously finished tied, and they decided it in shootouts. I don't necessarily love the matchup in the shootout, especially if the Sounders are not gonna sub in Andrew Thomas, which I have seen no indication would be the case. But man, I did dig up this stat just to put it out there. Andrew Thomas is 8-1 in his verifiable career in shootouts, and so I figured that out by he had at least one shootout win in college, and then he went like 5-1, I think, in the MLS Next Pro, and then he went 2-0 for the Sounders. He's very good in shootouts. Stephen Fry, not as good. He is 3-4 in his career in shootouts, all of them with the Sounders, and he won MLS Cup though. And then he won the 2 last year, and then he had 4 losses in between there.
Yeah. It's going to be frustrating if the Sounders go to a shutout and lose and Stephen Fry is in goal. I'll straight up say that. Like, I understand the reluctance to make substitutions for shootouts, and I don't think it's likely to happen, and I can see how that could be seen as a lack of respect for, a club legend, but the numbers seem so obvious to me. And not just the numbers, I've watched them both in shootouts. It's pretty clear that Andrew Thomas is just miles better at handling them. So
if you just look at who's guessed right the most times, it's going to be overwhelmingly on Andrew Thomas's side of the ledger.
And I mean, Steph guesses right a decent amount of the time, and for whatever reason, he just doesn't stop as many shots that he guesses right on as you would expect, but Thomas is better at guessing, and he's better at stopping the shots when he guesses.
Right.
It seems like an easy call to me, but I'm not a coach. That's not my decision. So we'll just hope it doesn't come to that.
Let's hope.
And I will say on the home field advantage tip, I would generally agree with you, but the Sounders are the best home team in the Western Conference this year.
That's true. That's true.
Minnesota is not especially good at home, though. I mean, they have a winning record at home, but their home record and away record is shockingly similar: 8-5-4 at home, 8-3-6 away. So it's not like they have a huge advantage playing at home, I guess. So I don't know, maybe it's a wash.
So I just want to share this funny little statistic that kind of shows what separated the Sounders from Minnesota, is that if that last game that they played in Minnesota had ended in a 0-0 tie, the Sounders and Minnesota would have ended up with the exact same record. They both would have been 15, 11, and 8. They would have both been on obviously 55 points. The Sounders would have scored one or 3 more goals than Minnesota, but Minnesota would have won in the tiebreaker because they still would have had a slight goal difference advantage. They would have been plus 16 to the Sounders plus 11. So
is goal difference back as the top?
No, wins are the first tiebreaker.
Oh, right. Wins. Okay, that's right.
And interestingly enough, wins came into play for both who won the conference and who made the final playoff spot, because San Diego had one more win than Vancouver. And even though Vancouver had a better goal difference, and then Real Salt Lake got in over both the Earthquakes and the Rapids because they had one more win, even though the Earthquakes had the better goal difference.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy. I mean, I guess you would expect that from the league with as much parity as MLS has, but it is kind of crazy how often like the 5th tiebreaker comes into play.
Yeah. I mean, in this case, the 8-9 spot in the East also was decided by the wins tiebreaker because Orlando City had a better goal difference than Chicago, but Chicago had one more win. So the tiebreakers came into pretty big effect this year.
Yeah, absolutely.
But anyway, I don't know. After that, the Sounders would most likely play San Diego. San Diego, I'm not super, like, as matchups go, I'm not freaking out about that one either. I do think there's something to be said about San Diego not having any real playoff experience.
Yeah.
You know, you can say big games are big games, but I mean, in the case of, Miami last year, I think the 3-game aspect of it threw them off a bit. So I don't know, maybe that's a 3-game thing, but they obviously had plenty of big game experience. San Diego doesn't have nearly the level of big game experience, regardless of playoffs, that Miami did last year. So I'm not necessarily
also a straight up mediocre home team too, which right. I think if you're talking about going down there and playing one game, if you've got a team that's barely over 500 at home, that's gotta.
They had the least. They were tied for the least number of home wins of anyone. Well, I guess anyone in the top 6. They were 7-5-5. That's not a great home record, no matter how you slice it. The Sounders were 10-1-6. As a contrast,
Sounders last year were 8-2-7 at home. Just to put that in perspective.
Yeah, right. I mean, 5 home losses is a lot of losses. They only were plus 8 goal difference. They only had 25 goals scored. I mean, honestly, this was if the Sounders had played like this at home ever, probably people would be very frustrated. 26 home points is not very much.
Yeah, that's the reason I brought up last season's Sounders record, right? Because that was, and I agree but that was the biggest complaint about last season is they were bad at home, and they were better at home than San Diego was this year.
Yeah. The Sounders even in 2023, where they were hardly scoring at all, they had the same goal difference. They actually had a slightly better record, even though they only scored 19 times. Yeah, the Sounders, I don't know if the Sounders have ever had that few home points. I'm not going to waste our time digging through this, but even in 2022, when they missed the playoffs, the Sounders had 30 home points. Like they were actually pretty good that year at home. But anyway, and then potentially you'll play Vancouver or LAFC. Those are good teams. Those are really good teams. But if you can put off playing them until the conference finals, I think you got to feel pretty good about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think every team outside of Minnesota is a team I think probably should be favored, maybe not heavily, but favored against the Sounders. But LAFC is the only one that I would feel like they don't have a puncher's chance going into that game. Now, I felt that against LAFC in the playoffs before, and then 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later or whatever it was, we won MLS Cup at home. So it's not like it would be unprecedented for us to beat a team that looks a lot better on paper, an LAFC team that looks a lot better on paper in LA, to get to an MLS Cup. But the other teams in the playoffs that the Sounders could face after Minnesota, I'm going to go in with the mindset that I think they're going to win, even if I wouldn't set the odds in their favor if I was a bookie.
Right.
That LAFC team, though, they're scary.
Yeah. Well, if people are interested, I wrote a whole column today that detailed a lot of reasons why you should at least allow yourself to be optimistic about the Sounders' chances. I leaned into a lot of statistics. I'll just kind of briefly go over some of the broader points. I do think the Leagues Cup run they went on matters. I think it shows their potential. Yes, it was mostly at home, and yes, it's mostly against Liga MX teams who they're not going to be facing, obviously. But these are Liga MX teams who are mostly pretty damn good. Cruz Azul is currently second in the table in Liga MX. It's not like they were a bad team all of a sudden. They came in as, let's not forget, a lot of people thought they were the best team outside of Europe coming into that game. Sounders put 7 on them. Club Tijuana is also been pretty good. They're like upper mid table in Liga MX. The Galaxy have been pretty good actually ever since they beat them. And both Santos Laguna and Club Puebla are like not that bad actually. And then Miami is Miami. Like these are all good wins. These are not bad wins really. Against the teams ahead of them in the West, they actually did okay. They were better than Minnesota in one of the 2 meetings that they played them, notably the most recent one, the one that was in Minnesota. They went 1-1 against LAFC. They only went 0-1 against Vancouver, but I think you could argue that they were definitely the better team in the more recent meeting. And then they split their games against San Diego. And then the teams in the East that they would potentially of the teams in the East that they played, they went 3-1-2 against them. So like the Sounders actually beat some decent teams this year. I guess is my point. Their record I think is generally a little better than it may look if you just look at their standing. A lot of teams that were worse than the Sounders have gone to MLS Cup. I'm not going to get into all that, but you can rest assured the Sounders would be not notably bad among MLS Cup finalists if they were to get there. This is an offensively deep team. They have 14 players that scored at least 2 goals in all competitions. Last year they only had 5 players who had scored at least 2 in MLS play. They had 9 in all comps, much more varied attack, I guess is the point I'm making. They've also been really good from open play, which looks like is one indicator of being good in the playoffs. And finally, Brian Schmetzer is a really good playoff coach. Like,
he is. Yeah.
Really good.
Yeah. Really, really good. Yeah. I mean, I think that the one thing that I was nervous about as we got closer to the playoffs was this team didn't look capable of playing defense the way that they have in the past in the playoffs. And suddenly over the last month or so, they do.
Yeah, exactly.
And you got to figure that there's a reason for that. And last thing I'll say, 55 points this year, 5th place. Sure. Not great. 56 points in 2019.
Yeah. No,
this is a good team. This is a good team. And the Western Conference is good this year. And that happens sometimes. Like there are some good teams in the West, and the Sounders, didn't have as good of a regular season as some of those teams, but come playoff time, I don't know, man. I just think it's a different ballgame.
Yeah, this year was an interesting year in the standings in general. A lot of inflated, or not, I won't say inflated numbers, but certainly more teams with more points. Obviously unprecedented for the 9th place team in the East to have 53 points. I don't think the cutoff line has ever been anywhere near that high. In the West, I'm almost positive 55 points would have gotten the Sounders in the top 4 any other season. So I think overall I'm pretty satisfied with the regular season. I wouldn't say I'm thrilled with it, but I think given all the challenges that they went through with both injuries and fixture congestion, hard to be too upset about 55 points. There weren't really, other than early in the season, there weren't any stretches of really frustrating play. I think even this, that 4-game winless run they went on right after League's Cup had some moments that it just didn't feel like dire. It never felt like the season was totally slipping away or anything. Like there were like little tweaks that you knew that they could make.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's such a proof of concept over the years of this team making those tweaks when it mattered and having success in the playoffs. That last season is a great example. I think that the Sounders team blows the doors off of last season's team, based on the regular season performance. But if they can make the same kinds of adjustments, but keep a little bit more of their cutting edge in the attack, I mean, I think you got to like their chances. I really do.
Yep. I totally agree. Well, I think this is a good place to take a break. We're going to come back and we're going to review our over-under picks from the beginning of the season. Yes, maybe a little early, but most of these were based on the MLS regular season anyway. So it feels like a good time to just put that in the, put it away and sort of we can move on with other things. But you're listening to Nos Audietes, part of the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network. Thank you for listening to the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network, which now includes Nos Audietes, Lobbing Scorchers, and the Cooler Guild. Although this podcast is free, it's only made possible through our paid subscribers. Plans start as low as $30 a year and allow us to remain independent and mostly ad-free. Subscribers get access to all our written and podcast content, including a full-text RSS feed and a mostly ad-free podcast feed that includes every show in one spot. If you really like what we're doing, though, I'd encourage you to sign up at our higher tiers, which include all sorts of various perks. The most popular of those is our members-only Discord, where the real Sounders sickos hang out. I know I've called this group the smartest, funniest, and best-informed Sounders fans in the world, but it's more than the rough equivalent of a Sounders Mensa meeting. Discord is where we make things happen, like for real. You know the promotion the Sounders ran that offered fans the opportunity to trade in their Messi jersey for a Paul Rothrock one? That originated in our community. You'll not only be the first to know about stuff, but you also have a semi-direct line to the movers and shakers at the Sounders organization. If you want to be one of the totally normal people who occupy the Sounder at Heart Discord, just become a supporter of Sounder at Heart. Anyway, thanks for listening and go Durs. Nos Audietes, admittedly, is not exactly known for our spicy takes, but that doesn't mean we want our food to be mild. Spice up your life with Hacks and Ferments. Handcrafted in Georgetown and made with the best local ingredients from across the Pacific Northwest, they specialize in unique small batch fermented hot sauces and vinegars. Hacks and Ferments brings bold flavors and natural fermentation together for something truly special. Whether you're a heat seeker or just looking to elevate your cooking, you'll find something you love at hacksandferments.com. That's HAXANFERMENTS.com. And right now, if you use the code Sounder at Heart, that's all one word, at checkout, you will get a free hot sauce with your order. Again, go to hacksandferments.com, use the code Sounder at Heart at checkout for a free hot sauce with your order. Hacks and Ferments is a proud sponsor of the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network. Welcome back to Nos Audietes on the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network. Well, it's the time of year where we're going to go for our over-under predictions, which I got to say, I thought the line was set okay. I know a few people were very upset that we didn't do halves. Because then it would have made it seem more betting, I guess. But the point here was not to like actually make bets. The point was to set what we thought were reasonable over-unders and go off of that. I going over this, I feel okay about where we set the line for the most part. But
I do too. Yeah, I do too.
Aaron, why don't you just jump in? Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, to be clear, we did gamble a lot on this. We have a substantial amount of money on the line here, but that was just for fun. that doesn't take away from the primary
$2
purpose. Yeah, that's right. Well, hey, you know what? Nowadays,
yeah.
But yeah, let's get going. So our first prediction line was points. Unless otherwise noted, by the way, these are all MLS competitions only. There are a couple that aren't, but if I don't specify, just assume MLS only. So points 61 was our line. We both picked the under, and we were both right. It was 58.
Yeah, I gotta say, maybe I was a little aggressive on the over under. I think I probably said this at the time. Like if we both picked under, I was probably too aggressive in setting the line. But yeah. Wait, the over was okay.
I said 58, but it was 55. My bad.
Yeah, it was 55. Yeah, we in hindsight 61 in a season where you're going to play 50 games. But at the same time, Whitecaps are over and they've played right as of now. I think they've played one more game than the Sounders. So not impossible.
Yeah. I mean, there were 6 teams over 61 points this year. So,
yeah,
crazier things have happened. Next one was goals in MLS. And this is one of the ones people who were mad about the lack of halvesies are going to just go ape over. The line we set was 58. I chose under. You chose over. We were both wrong because the Sounders scored 58 goals in MLS this year.
What a prediction. That was a pretty aggressive. I have to say that was an aggressive one too, because I believe it's 10 more goals than they scored last year, right?
51 last year.
Okay. So not, but it's 58. I gotta say I don't know if I realized this though. That's the second most goals they've ever scored in MLS season. I don't know if I was actually aware of that when I set this line, but
do you know how many goals they scored in 2023, by the way?
Like 42 or something like that.
41. Good Lord.
Eesh. Yeah.
Man, oh man.
That's a big improvement from 2023.
Yeah, it is. Next
they only
one,
scored 19 goals at home that year. That's crazy.
Yeah. That, and I was gonna say in the last segment, but there wasn't a good time to mention it. 2023, they actually had fewer points at home than San Diego has had this year. They had 29 at home this year. Or that year, 2023. Sorry. Pretty brutal. Pretty brutal. All right, next one. This is one we can't answer yet because there's still competitive games to be played. You and I both picked the over. The line we set was 50. Currently, they've played 47. They're guaranteed to play 49. To push, they need to get past Minnesota. To win, they need to get to the conference final. Not to win, but to go.
Well,
over.
Technically it depends on how they get past Minnesota.
That's true.
They could theoretically play 3 games against Minnesota, and then the conference semifinals would be game 51. Yeah. But that was a pretty good. I feel good about that line, though.
Yeah, I think so. I think that was spot on. I mean, I think a push is probably the most the most likely outcome, I guess.
I mean, it meant they had to get. We knew what it meant is that they had to advance in 2 of the tournaments that they were in.
Well, I mean, at this point, right, 50 is the most plausible outcome.
Right. Oh yeah. Now, for sure.
Yeah. But I think you're right. Like it was 50 was good because they did have to play a lot of games in Leagues Cup to get there. They had to get into the playoffs to get there. And that's, I feel like, what we were trying to gauge with that one. So,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We didn't pull this number out of thin air.
Yeah. All right. So we've got some goal contributions, and this is really interesting, I think, as we go through these compared to
the team
being a push at 58 on the goals scored for the team, and also the second most goals the Sounders have ever scored in the regular season. So the first one up was 25 goal contributions from Albert Rusnak. Both of us went under, and we were both right. He had 21. Still pretty good.
That's still pretty good season. Yeah. I feel like we probably said he could go under this and still have a good season, and that's what he did
for sure. Yeah.
11 goals, 10 assists. It's funny because when the Sounders signed him, this was like the imagined season that he was going to be racking up,
right?
Like these double seasons, and here he is, 2 seasons. He's played as a 10 2 seasons. He's got doubles in both seasons.
Yeah, I mean, he had 26 last season, but he scored more goals this season. A lot of those assists were from set pieces. A lot of those assists were secondary assists. Not taking a thing away from Albert Rusnak, who I think has more than proven his worth this year. That last year wasn't a fluke. I'd almost take this season over last season, I think, even though the goal contribution numbers are a little lower.
I bet his, I wonder if his per minute production is up this year.
That's a good question. I mean, he played,
because he's missed more time this year.
2,150 minutes this year, 2,539 minutes last year. I guess I could run that real quick.
Well, I mean, I can tell you in MLS play that he is scoring 0.46 goals per minute as opposed to 0.36 or per 90. His goals and assists. Actually, if you take out his penalties, his production is almost exactly on goals and assists per 90.
Yeah.
0.68 versus 0.67. That's interesting.
Yeah, that is a consistent player.
But if you include penalties, he's slightly up.
Yeah. I mean, I think 25 was aggressive, right? Because 26 was eye-popping last year.
Yeah.
So I feel very good about his contribution this year, even though he hit the under there. Next one is 14 goals for Jordan Morris, obviously, through no fault of his own, minimal fault of his own. He was under there at 5. I took the under, you took the over, but I don't think it's really fair to hold this against you. He was a guy who's been remarkably healthy, since his last injury, and he had some fluky stuff happen this year and was not able to play that many minutes. So,
well, and I'll add that his goal production per 90 is his highest of his career. He's on 0.6 goals per 90 right now. His previous career high was 2020 at 0.52. So on a pure goal scoring production per minute basis, he is having a career year. It's just that he's missed more time this year than in any season other than his completely lost years.
Yeah. Another funny happenstance, Danny Psovsky, 14 goals. So exactly the number we set for Jordan.
Yeah, that is funny.
We got from Danny. Next one, Jesus Ferreira, 20 goal contributions. Pretty aggressive number, I think, in hindsight, because we both picked over too, which, man, we were bullish on Jesus.
I think we were maybe almost like trying to prove a point in our bullishness.
That sounds like us, yeah. He comes in at 11, so well under, but I think everybody's got to be pretty happy with Jesus. I mean, he did struggle earlier in the year. I think that if we had gotten, post Club World Cup Jesus over the full year, he probably does get to that 20 number, but he definitely looks like the player we thought we were getting, I think, at this point.
Yeah, and to just kind of piggyback on the aggressiveness of this number, he had only gone over that once in his career. Or we
both went over that one. That's, man.
Yeah, that's maybe
we were on one.
Yeah, that one I think I feel I have some regret over that one.
Yeah. I think 15 probably would have been the better number. He would have been under that too. But speaking of 15, that was a number we set for Pedro. I went over, you went under. Once again, we were both wrong because this is a push.
Well, I guess I miss it. It was a push in all comps.
Okay.
But
what did he have in MLS then?
He just had 4 and 4 in MLS, 4 and 5.
Oh yeah.
So he only had 9.
Okay. So he's under. So he's under at 8.
He was under. Yeah.
All right.
But I feel okay with this one again.
Yeah.
His production just did not come where we thought it was going to come. He was much more productive in non-MLS competitions than I think we had anticipated him being.
And I think similarly to Jesus, if he plays the way he played post Club World Cup
Right.
over the course of the whole year, he's, I think, going over 15 goal contributions most likely. All right, well, so you got that one right. I was wrong. We're not keeping track or anything, but anyway, I do think it's interesting that all of the key players whose goal contributions we tried to predict were under, but
and yet
58 goals in all competitions, probably because of Danny Musovski scoring 14
goals in just in
goals.
MLS.
Yeah,
like
MLS,
85 goals in all competitions.
Yeah. 58
It's
in
a
MLS.
huge number of goals.
Yeah.
They scored a lot of goals this year.
They scored a lot. The Leagues Cup performance was pretty outrageous. It was definitely. I think that at times it made them feel more dangerous than they were. And so when they didn't play at that level, when they played in Minnesota or at Houston or wherever, it felt underwhelming. So it almost felt like, in a weird, like paradoxical way, scoring all those goals in Leagues Cup made their league performance feel a little worse than it was in the attacking phase.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Anyway, yeah. But I did think that was interesting. The next one was 25 games from Obed in MLS. And he had 26, so he was over there. I picked the over, you picked the under. I feel like this was kind of a proxy, is Obed getting sold question.
Yes, I think and I think we also talked about that when we did it.
In hindsight, though, we probably should have gone with 20 if that was really what we were trying to figure out, or maybe even 15. I don't know, because he has not been sold. He's still here. Did miss some time with injury. Did miss some time with the Mexican national team, which I think has actually been Mexican under 21 national
20.
team, under 20. So that, and I think that's actually been a decent number of the games he's missed, if I recall correctly. But
I think the biggest chunk of games, I think, I'm almost positive that the most he missed 3 games, I believe, for the U20 World Cup, and that was the most. That was the biggest reason that he missed games. I don't think he missed any games because of injury. Did he?
Yeah, he had. Did he have a red card? He did not have a red card, so didn't miss any games for that.
Yeah, but he may have gotten rest.
But he got some. He got some rest. Yeah. All right. Next one up was Christian with 2,500 minutes at MLS. We both went under. He was over. 2,633 minutes. That's a lot of minutes, though. I mean, that is a lot of minutes to play in MLS, especially because he only played he played 33 games. Never mind. He started 32. So, you know what? No, I'm looking at 2024. Sorry. I knew he had not played that many games. He played 31 games, started 30. So yeah, 2,633 minutes is a lot. It is the most on the team by about 300 minutes, and it's the most of any outfield player by about 350 minutes. So he played 4 full games more than anybody else.
And then another 1,000 minutes in other competitions. That's the thing that's really crazy. Like he played all 270 minutes in the Club World Cup.
Yeah. Pretty wild. And, in hindsight, 2,500 minutes is a lot of minutes for us to set that target at. But, and hey, that's probably why we both picked the under, because that is a lot of minutes. We're about 2/3 of the way through here. Next one is 10 starts in MLS for Andrew Thomas. He was under at 8. Another one, though, where it just feels like he played more because he, was the starter for Leagues Cup. I had
15 starts across all competitions.
Yeah. So I think a lesson for us is if they're in this many competitions next time, we should just do all comps. I had the under, you had the over.
Also, maybe a different comment. I think we were trying to make a different commentary on how much of a role he was going to play.
Right.
Because I think we knew he would get probably Leagues Cup, for instance.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there was a question about how much rotation they would do with Steph.
Right.
It turns out not any, really. I mean, he's played when he's been healthy. He missed games through injury, obviously. But he's been the unquestioned starter when he's been healthy in league play. So Another one that's kind of a bummer in hindsight, Paul Arriola, 10 goal contributions in MLS. He had 1. We were both
Right.
over. I feel completely fine about that prediction. First assist of the year, and then nothing else. But shit happens. I guess.
You only played 5 games, 6 games, and
something
all
like
comps.
that. Yeah. I think he played like 2 games in MLS.
2 league games. Yeah.
74 minutes total. So yeah. Man, it feels like a million years ago that he got hurt. It'll be good to have him back next year. All right, here's one from all comps. It's the only one from all comps, actually. Paul Rothrock, 12 goal contributions, and he had 13. We were both over. We were both optimistic about Paul's season.
Good line, though.
Yeah, very good line. Yeah, it feels like he scored more than that, I will say, or contributed more goal contributions than that.
And I will say one of the reasons for that is, I think he has been around a lot of goals. Like I think of the one in LA where he was putting all this pressure on the defense, and it ended up going down as an own goal, but it could have, he was there potentially to finish it. And he just was so active and around. He just was on the field for so many good things, I think, is part of why it feels like he had more goal contributions.
Big goals too, right? Like I feel like every goal he scored, every goal he created was memorable or important,
right?
So that's probably part of it. But you know what? I think the question here was, hey, can he do this again? He absolutely can. He absolutely showed that this is repeatable. So good line and good answer, I think, all things considered, assuming he comes back. Next one, we were on some crazy shit here. Georgie Manungu, 70 successful dribbles in MLS. He had 29. You picked the over.
What was I thinking? I don't know. Like, he would have had to play so much.
He would have. And I feel like this was a bit that I'm just not fully remembering.
Honestly, like, it almost feels like it must. I don't have a good explanation for this. This is an insane line. I don't know what I was thinking with this line, because
that's so many dribbles.
That is it. Like, I want to give some. I want to give some context to that, because it's so many dribbles. All right, so the most number of successful dribbles in the league, there are only 3 players in the league who had more than 70 successful dribbles. They are Lionel Messi, Denny Bouanga, and Carlos Heel, all of whom played at least, Bouanga did that in, no, that's touches. So all of them played a ton.
Yeah.
Like they all played at least, 2,500 minutes or something, or close to it. So it's like for Georgie to get anywhere near that, he would have had to play just so many more minutes than he was. Like, I don't know where I thought he was going to get the minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Funny though, to think about. That would be, you've got to dribble 2 guys a game. And even if you do that, if you do that every time out, 2 guys a game, you still don't hit that. Maybe he can do it someday. I don't know.
As it is, he's a top 50 player in the stat. So, it's not that he, Now
I'm curious, actually. So let's just, do you have the per 90 rate on that, or?
I'm looking for it. So his per 90 rate is 2.96 now.
So if he plays, if he plays 30 games, let's see, 2.96 times. If he plays 30 games, that's almost 90 dribbles. So maybe maybe you weren't that far off.
I just think the assumption that he was going to play that much is what is like, I just don't, it's hard to like especially in hindsight, it's hard to imagine a scenario where he played enough minutes to get that high. Like 50 would have been a aggressive number, and he would have still gone under that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anyway,
I would like to see it though. One of these days,
it would be fun.
Will. If he becomes a starter either here or somewhere else, I think there's a good chance he'll do it at least once in his career.
Yeah, I mean he is a honestly almost unstoppable dribbler. Like he is. I've never seen someone who every single time he gets the ball, you think he's capable of beating his man.
Yeah. All right, last one. Stuart Hawkins, 10 appearances. We both went under here, and we were right to do so because he had 4. I do think if he doesn't have the injuries, he has a pretty good chance of getting there. Honestly, with the injuries they had to the center back core or center back.
I mean, he missed 4 months.
Yeah,
he missed 4 months where he obviously didn't get any, and during those 4 months, the Sounders played, a dozen league games, and it's not hard to imagine him playing in half of them because, Kim Keehee played a lot. John Bell played a lot. And I don't know that I would have expected him to.
Alex played a decent
Alex
amount.
played 4 games at center back.
Yeah. Rough year for him. Certainly not a make or break year for him. He's 19 and he's a center back and he's huge. So, I still have very high hopes for the kid. But would have been nice to see him get a little bit of a breakthrough this year. But
I do think he's well positioned to have one next year, though. Like I feel very good about his potential next year.
And when he did play it, I thought he looked good. So
yeah, I thought he looked really good.
Yeah. All right, that's it. That's I think we did okay, both in setting the lines and making our predictions. This is a good exercise. I'm sure we'll repeat it next year.
Yeah, I think that was fun. Well, I think that's all we got for today. So thanks for hanging out with us. Thank you to our sponsors, Full Pool Wines and Hacks and Ferments. Thank you, of course, to our subscribers. And I will just pitch you again. The only reason we're able to keep doing this is because of people like you. Our memberships start as low as $30. At the $75 level, you get access to our Discord. We have a free sticker program that you can get involved in. We're still working on getting our full text RSS up and running. That should be happening relatively soon, though. So lots of good stuff going on. And this is the time of year where I will probably be hiring some freelancers to help us with work. So it's like subscribers help pay the freelancers as well. So thank you to everyone who's making this work. But we've got at least 2 more of these shows to do. At least, maybe a bunch more. So I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves. But Aaron, signing off for Aaron Campo and Lickett, I am Jeremiah Oshan. This is No Study at This, part of the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network. And remember, you'll never get alone.
Let's go Sounders.